News on the transition of power so far. President-elect Donald Trump making it official, naming ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson his nominee for Secretary of State. Tillerson has no foreign policy experience. He has built business relationships, though, with many, many world leaders, including a very close one with Russian President Vladimir Putin. While he has spent 40 years at Exxon, that relationship with Putin could make his confirmation hearings more difficult, with several senators on both sides of the aisle expressing concerns. Sources tell CNN former Secretaries of State Condoleezza Rice and James Baker, along with former Defense Secretary Bob Gates, recommended Tillerson to Trump. That's what got him in the running at all. We are continuing, of course, to follow this breaking story. Also, the president-elect tweeting that he will be delaying his first post-election news conference, where he'd been expected on Thursday to address potential conflicts of interest with his businesses and the presidency. He did give us some idea of his plans, though. Here's what he tweeted. Even though I'm not mandated to do so by law, I will be leaving my businesses before January 20th so that I can focus full-time on the presidency. Two of my children, Don and Eric, plus executives, will manage them. No new deals will be done during my term or terms in office. Let's discuss with our panel again. Jackie Kucinich, David Gregory, Philip Mudd. David, Ivanka's name not in there to run the businesses. You know, I mean, we know how highly he thinks of her as a business executive. So how do you read that? Does that mean she'll be in the White House with him?
Well, or close by, and close enough, even if on the outside, to be able to advise her husband, Jared Kushner, is someone that the president-elect has said he wants to be close as an advisor in the White House or just outside the White House. I think there's no question that both Ivanka and Jared have played a big role and have real sway over the president-elect. So it sounds like that's where their area will be. It's just not clear to me the extent to which he's going to separate himself from his businesses. Operational control is one thing. I don't know how he avoids other conflicts.
It has to be unclear to you, because it is, by definition, unclear. The lack of transparency is raising its head once again. How will we know whether he's part of this essential brand licensing business? That's what it is, right? I mean, everybody's trying to report now. Mother Jones came out with a deep dive on which banks he owes money to and how much, but you don't know. You don't know if there are going to be deals done or not. How would you know? It's not a public company. Until Trump starts to become transparent with his holdings and his finances, no matter what he says, it's completely unverifiable.
It would also be really helpful if he'd had a press conference once in a while. This one is supposed to be rescheduled. Who knows if it will be rescheduled? We weren't told.
Last press conference he had was the one where he encouraged Russia to hack Hillary's emails.
Right. So maybe it's actually smart that they haven't had one yet. But seriously, I mean, he was supposed to have a press conference on Thursday. It'd be the first one he's had in ages, to your point, and he didn't, because he has preferred these more structured sit-downs with, right now, Fox News, and not impugning Chris Wallace. He's very, very talented. But it's very different in sort of a rapid-fire press conference situation, and he just hasn't gone there.
Also, he can say what he wants, Pop. If he doesn't put out his tax returns, if he doesn't give you a business filing of here are my business interests, here's what I'm separating from, here's how you'll know there'll be no more deals.
Don't you think it's interesting that in the tweet he mentions, by the way, because of the way the law was written in this land, I, as the president, and by the way it applies to the vice president, don't actually have to abstain from any financial gain from being president.
He's playing on the absence of law to mean that there's an absence of responsibility, and the two things don't go together.
Completely different. So let's turn over to something else, because he said in that Chris Wallace interview, as you well know, basically, I don't need these daily briefings, these presidential briefings every day. I'm a smart guy. If something changes, call me up. I'm available at a minute's notice. Here's how President Obama reacted to that.
It doesn't matter how smart you are. You have to have the best information possible to make the best decisions possible. And my experience with our intelligence agencies is that they are not perfect. They'd be the first to acknowledge that. But they are full of extraordinarily hardworking, patriotic, and knowledgeable experts. And if you're not getting their perspective, their detailed perspective, then you are flying blind.
Who's right? Does he need them daily? Does he not?
I don't know about daily. This is about access to information. The presidents do this in different ways over the past 50 years. Is Mike Pence talking to him? I think there's one key issue, though, that the president raises that he's exactly right on, and that's a poor choice of words by the president-elect. This is not about being smart. Of course he's smart. This is about being informed. You look at what's happened just over the past 3 or 4 days. Military activity by the Chinese in the South China Sea, bombings across the Middle East. You look at the Syrian offensive that's resulting in the humanitarian crisis in Aleppo. And you want to tell me the president says it's like watching paint dry, there's not a lot going on in the world? One more reality check about Washington, D.C., suggesting that the CIA director is going to say, hey, Donnie, it's time for a briefing. That don't happen in Washington, D.C. To suggest there's that level of informality to create a briefing on the fly is simply not correct. That's not Washington.
And also, look at what just happened with the Russian hacking. There's no way, from my sources on the intel side and on the ground side, people who are working that case to prove that Russia was behind these hacks that took place during the election. There's no way that Donald Trump, if he were taking his briefing seriously and listening to them, could say, this is a ridiculous notion that Russia hacked and was behind the hacks here. There's no way he could say it.
Oh, time out. I disagree with you. I think he absolutely would say that. We just went through an entire campaign that was based initially partly on a claim that the President of the United States was not an American citizen. We'd call that fake news.
No. You're saying something different. You and I seem to cross signals a lot. Let me say it again. If he's listening to the people like you who are charged with briefing the president about what matters, there's no way that he could say the suggestion that Russia hacked or had something to do with the hacking of the emails during the election is ridiculous.
What Phil's saying is even knowing that, he would still
ignore it.
Say it.
But I'm saying it just shows more need for these briefings and more need for him to get with believing the information that's told him.
You know, when the president-elect met with President Obama, he had a look on his face and in his general comportment like someone who was appropriately awed and humbled by the presidency. I don't think you ought to lose that when it comes to developing information about what's going on in the rest of the world. And I think he also understands the importance of the institution of the presidency. The fact that he responds to this assessment about Russia and says, I don't think there was interference, is so dangerous. No one needs to make a conclusion about how it might have swayed the election. That's not the point. The real point is there was an effort to interfere with our election. There was an effort by an outside power to disrupt our core institutions of democracy. If you're the President of the United States, it's bigger than you. You have an obligation to say this is wrong. We won't let it stand. You can't just freelance and pop off about this stuff because you may come to rue the day that you do that. If it does, it becomes more materially significant to the administration. That's where I think he's being incredibly short-sighted. He doesn't know what he doesn't know at this stage.
Quick button?
Yep. This is not about fake news. I'm concerned that we're transitioning to fake intelligence. You make it up as you want to see it.
Philip Mudd, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jackie Kucinich, David, as always. Exxon's Rex Tillerson. He's the man of the moment, nominated by Donald Trump to become the next Secretary of State. The president-elect calls him a, quote, world-class player. He told people around him, this guy is a level above anybody else I'm considering. Does his business background automatically translate into good diplomacy? Next.